Do you think all of your chord progressions are boring? In this video we will give you an easy way to spice up chord progressions, secondary dominants. In a major key there are 7 chords. These chords are created with 3 notes each and are known as triads. The notes for these chords come from the relevant scale. For example, here are the 7 chords in the key of C major. 1 C major, 2 D minor, 3 E minor, 4 F major, 5 G major, 6 A minor, and 7 B diminished. They are created with notes from the C major scale. You will see that they are labelled with Roman numerals. Generally speaking, we label major chords with uppercase Roman numerals and minor chords with lowercase Roman numerals. The Roman numerals indicate the role of the chord in the key. This is important when crafting chord progressions. The chord functions in a key can also be shown by using the following terms. These refer to the scale degrees on which the triads are built: tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, and leading. When it comes to major key chord progressions, the most important chords are 1, 4, and 5. This takes us through the different chord families that provide tension and resolution, which is fundamental to Western music. The tonic chord is stable and feels like home. The subdominant provides us with some movement and takes us on a journey. And finally, the dominant creates tension. This instability needs to be resolved, which is what happens when we move back to the tonic chord. It is common to use the 5 dominant chord at the end of progressions to resolve back to the 1 chord. Listen to this example in the key of C major and hear how the role of the chords changes. We now know what the dominant chord is and its relationship to the tonic chord. This will allow us to understand the concept of secondary dominants. If we take one of the chords 2 to 7 and treat that as a new tonic chord, we can then work out a dominant chord for this new tonic. If we use this new dominant chord in our original key, it is known as a secondary dominant. Let's clarify this with an example. We saw the key of C major earlier. The dominant 5 chord in the key of C major is G major. We will treat this G major chord as the tonic. The G major chord is the tonic or 1 chord in the key of G major. So let's now look at the chords in the key of G major. You can see that the dominant 5 chord in the key of G major is D major. This is the secondary dominant of the 5 chord in the original key of C major. You may see this referred to as the dominant of the dominant, or the 5 of 5. It is written in notation with a capital V followed by a slash and another capital V. Let's use this secondary dominant in our chord progression. The most common way to do this is to play your secondary dominant before your target chord. In our example, we will play D major before G major. Listen to the strong pull to the G major chord and the resolution it provides, whilst also serving its purpose as the dominant for the tonic chord C major. This adds a layer of interest to the progression. Secondary dominant chords don't strictly belong in the key, as they introduce notes from outside of the scale, but they are widely used, and the strength of resolution to the target chord means that they don't sound out of place. Using a secondary dominant is like performing a mini key change, with the target chord being the tonic of this new key. It's like a brief glimpse into another key, but because we don't dwell on the new tonal centre, it is never established. Watch the playlist in the description to learn more about changing key. It is very common to see dominant chords written with a 7 next to them. This indicates a dominant 7th chord. Dominant 7th chords further intensify the drawback to the 1 tonic chord and create what is known as a perfect cadence. If you'd like to learn more about dominant 7th chords, then check out our video in the description. Let's look at the previous example again, but this time we'll change the secondary dominant and dominant chords to the dominant 7th chord. Listen to the difference this creates. You can use the secondary dominant on any of the chords in a major key, not just the 5 chord. The notation will reflect this, with an uppercase V followed by a slash and the target chord Roman numeral, such as V/4, V/6, etc. The distance between the tonic chord and the dominant is 7 half steps up. This is also known as a perfect fifth. If you'd like to learn more about this, then check out our intervals video in the description below. One way to work out your secondary dominant chord is to start on the root note of your target chord and count up 7 half steps. Then you create a major chord with this new root note. For example, let's say we want to work out the secondary dominant of the 6th chord, A minor, in the key of C major. If we count up 7 half steps from the root note A, we get to E. So the secondary dominant of the 6th chord A minor is E major. Using the 5 of 6 to 6 chord change is one of the most common uses of the secondary dominant in popular music. Let's use that in a chord progression. First without dominant 7th chords, and then with dominant 7th. An interesting thing occurs if you work out the secondary dominant of the 4 chord. In the key of C major, the 4 chord is F major. Count up a perfect fifth from F and you get to C. This means that the 5 of 4 in the key of C major is C major. Obviously, this will just sound like the tonic chord, but if we change the chord to a dominant 7th, then it takes on its new role. That's because typically you would turn the 1 tonic chord into a major 7th chord. Watch the video in the description to learn about major 7th chords. For now, just listen to the difference between them in the following progression. Secondary dominants are also found in minor keys. The same rules apply, the secondary dominants will still all be major chords. Listen to how this sounds in the following example in the key of A minor. So far we've always resolved the secondary dominants to their target chord straight away, but you can create longer chains of secondary dominants. We'll move back to the key of C major to look at this. The 5 of 2 is A major. Let's make that a dominant 7th chord and use it to begin the progression. Typically we would resolve this to the 2 chord, which is D minor, but if we use the secondary dominant that is on the same root note, we can continue the chain. In this case, the 5 of 5 is D major, so after our A dominant 7th, we'll play D dominant 7th. In theory, you can keep this sort of chain going as long as you like, but here we will resolve the 5 of 5 to 5 G dominant 7th, and then the tonic C major. Listen to how the chain sounds. Another idea you can explore is to not resolve the secondary dominant at all. This creates an interesting sound because the listener is expecting resolution, and when it is denied, a strange displacement is heard. Look at this example with the 5 of 6. We would typically play the 6th chord right after this, but instead we will completely ignore the 6th chord and carry on with the progression. Combined with not using any dominant 7th chords, listen to how this changes the feel of the progression. In the second half, we will also experiment with chord inversions to highlight the descending nature of this progression. Always remember that inversions are available to highlight certain notes and create different effects within your chord progressions. Dominant 7th chords are critical to fully utilising secondary dominants. Watch the video on screen now to master dominant 7th chords.